Hello everyone, and welcome to my next video. I'm sorry it's been so long since the last one. I got a little bit busier than I had been anticipating in Second Life. So, yes, I had to deal with all of that. Anyway, today, upon the request of a friend of mine actually, I'm going to be walking you through my process of creating lipstick appliers for Second Life, because unlike a lot of people, I actually use the 2D Photoshop files instead of the 3D ones. I have used the 3D ones before, but I found that they're, the two of us don't get along, basically. And I find them to be a lot more tedious and sort of unnecessarily complicated than they have to be, especially seeing as Photoshop is trying to phase out all of its 3D features at the moment. So I'm going to be talking you through my process for creating lipsticks in the 2D Photoshop files from LeLutka today. So let's jump right into things with step 1, finding your reference. Obviously with your reference it kind of goes without saying that it needs to be as high quality as possible. I try to go over 10,024 pixels by 10,024 pixels, even though it's going to get compressed and squashed down in Second Life. I've found that working at a resolution at least above that gives me a lot of flexibility when it comes to adding in those details from the original picture. As you can see in some of the pictures that I've compiled here, you can see that there's lots of little reflections and stuff like that, and in really low resolution pictures that just doesn't get captured. And second of all, you want to make sure that your photo is as front-facing as possible. Now, in my pictures, obviously, some of them aren't 100% straight, and that's fine. We can work with that. But obviously, having a good basis of symmetry to go off of is helpful, especially in later stages when it comes to sort of warping the image to fit the SL UVs. So my recommendations for sources to find good lip pictures, like the ones you can see in my references here, the top 3 I would consider perfect references, and the bottom 3 I would consider to be functional references. So they're okay, but they might require a little bit of prep work to get them to work properly. 3 good suggestions for this are Instagram, that's where I got all of these references, Pinterest, where you can also search specifically by keywords and stuff like that, and then makeup web stores. So for example, K-Beauty web stores, Yes Style, things like, for Western examples, for example, Jeffree Star Cosmetics has a lot of sort of swatch pictures. I think Sephora does as well. I'm not entirely sure of what references you'll know from your country, but I'm sure that you can think of one off the top of your head. So yes, going online and really searching for these images so that you find ones that are as high quality as possible. I've found that on makeup web stores you'll find genuinely high quality images because, they're intended for customer previews of the swatches and whatnot. So yes. The next step is understanding the EvoX PSD. Now, the EvoX PSD that I'm going to be using is their 2D template, which you can download for free off of their website, as I shall show you now. So, we're on the LeLutka website, which is just lelutkasl.com, and you can click on this big download button over here, and then you want to go to Texture Kit EvoX, and it'll give you a zip that you can download and unzip, which I've already done over here. And inside the zip, you will find your LeLutka EvoX UV Texture Kit male-female. Now, it doesn't really matter which head you're using it on, because LeLutka tries to keep all of their UVs fairly similar. Now, I will put a little disclaimer out there that not all of their heads have perfectly aligned UVs. Some of them can be a little bit sketch to work with. That's coming from personal experience. As a Rin head user, I can confirm that lipsticks that are made to work with Avalon won't necessarily work with Rin and vice versa, which is actually why I have now switched over to Avalon head. I managed to get the shape fairly similar to my Rin shape, But now I'm able to wear a lot more lipsticks than I would have been able to otherwise. Because the UVs on the Avalon head are what a lot of people consider to be the sort of standard for creating makeup, in quotation marks. So when you're making your makeup, I would suggest working with Avalon for women and something like Skylar for men, because they're very sort of internationally applicable heads, I guess. So yes, opening up the EvoX texture kit, this is what you'll be presented with. The top texture layer is your EvoX texture kit placeholder marker text thing, which you can hide. You're not really going to need that. Next, you have your eye UV, your lashes UV, HD brow, HD lips, eyeshadow, ears, head, and neck transition. Now, by default, this is set up for skin creators. So by default, you'll see the head and neck transition, respectively. But we aren't going to be working with those, obviously. We're going to be working with the HD lips layers. So if you're working in a copy of this PSD, if you have a backup saved somewhere else, then you can feel free to delete everything except for the HD lips folder. Because for lipstick projects, obviously, we're not going to be needing them. So that's what I'm going to do, because I've saved it into the actual folder of the lips that I want to make. So I'm just going to select by clicking and then shift select and delete. And to unlock this layer to be able to delete it, I'm just going to click on the little lock over there, or you can click on it over here and then delete that as well. Delete, delete, delete. Okay, so now I'm going to unhide the HD lips, and this is what we're presented with. If I open this up, this is the HD lips sort of preview thing that gives you kind of an idea of where the placement is for everything. I don't work with this. I have my own alphas that I use that I am going to provide for you guys to download in the video description. But I do still keep this in the file just to reference back to check placement sometimes. However, the most, I guess, useful tool that you'll find for checking placement is just testing inworld. So I'm going to hide this for now, and I'm going to show the HD lips UV. Now, it might be a little bit difficult to see, so let me just create a color solid and just drag that down under everything. So what we have here is we have a UV taken directly from the LeLutka HD head that was used to create the dev kit. I'm assuming it's something like Avalon or what came before the EvoX line? Maybe Erin, something like that. I don't know. Everything's been updated to EvoX now anyway. But anyway, so what you can see here is this is the border of the lips. This out here is a little bit of extra skin, and that's basically the range that you have to work with. Now, obviously, we're not going to be taking up all of that unless you're doing, I don't know, a Halloween lip with blood drips or whatever, then I guess you can go slightly down to the chin. But yes, so we're mainly going to be working in this area. Now, all of this smushed bit here is the inner lips. And hang on, let me actually get a brush and colour this for you guys so you can see better. So the red is going to be the inside. Oh, where's my pen? Where's my tablet pen? Fishing around. Here we go. The insides here, this is all inner lip. And then I'll mark in yellow. This is all outer lip. Here. There we go. And then this is what I like to call dead space. This is where basically the Bakes on Mesh skin that you're wearing will take over and provide the inner mouth texture. Basically. So you don't really need to put anything there. I mean, to be honest, you don't really even need to put anything here, because the inner lip is also sort of taken over by the Bakes on Mesh. So really what we can do is we can do a blend out in this area so that it kind of naturally fades from your lipstick to transparent. But we'll get to that. Anyway, I'll hide this for now because I will reference back to this. So yes, as you can see, some of these squares are slightly more squashed and some are slightly more stretched than others. That's puckering and stretching. And it's a very common thing with most UVs. It's slightly unavoidable in most cases. Because what ends up happening is you don't want seams cutting all across your avatar's face, and so you have to sort of work with a little bit of smushing in the corners and whatnot. So as you can see, let me just zoom in a bit. Here in the corner, it's very smushed. And then in the inner lips, it stretches out a little bit. And then again, this... Sorry, let me activate this again. This line in between the red and the yellow, it gets a little bit smushed again. That's where the lip folds from inner to outer lip. And then again, here, it's slightly more stretched. So, let me bring in an example to show you better what I mean and try and explain things. So, I've opened the demo swatch of my Nunna lips, which I released for Skin Fair this year. And as you can see, if I put a solid color in the background to make it a bit more visible, in the corners, it smushes together to points. And then in the center, it's all quite stretched. But then here in the inner lip, where it gets darker, you can see that... Let me make the brush a little bit smaller and mark in yellow. You can see that everything kind of curves in like that. And that's because it gets puckered over here. It gets narrower. And the same over here, you'll see that everything kind of goes like that. Like so. That's again because of puckering and stretching, where here it's very stretched and here it's very squashed. And the same here, squashed, stretched. So now when we compare that to this, you understand a little bit better, I think. So, then there's one more thing that we haven't looked at in the lip kit. And that is this save slot preview over here. Now, what you can do over here, and this is entirely optional. You do not need to do this. This is an optional step. Is here you can put your logo or a preview of the lip swatch or, you know, something relating to this collection or something like that. You can put a little preview here. And then when you use your EvoX style HUD, which I will show you now. So when you use this style HUD that comes with your head when you purchase it, you'll see these little images here. And I have a few presets saved, and you'll see that some of them have images and some of them don't. Some of them are just grey. And that's because the grey ones don't have an image in that little slot. And the ones that aren't grey, like this one from More, I know looking at it that that's More, they have put an image there themselves. And then for full face slots, you can actually save your own image by clicking and holding. And then you can edit picture and you can put a UUID in there, for example, of your avatar's face with that makeup on. And that's why I kind of don't really see the point of it, to be honest with you. Most people don't even use this HUD. I do because I'm lazy. And I think it's really only a solution for lazy people that really aren't very explorative with their makeup. So it is, I guess, a bit of a niche thing. I'm not particularly explorative with my makeup. I have a few sort of styles that I like. And I mean, if I click through these lips, you'll see that they're all sort of very same-ish. The styles that I like. So, yes, if you're not like that, then you probably won't have ever either heard of this or used it or whatever. Which is why this is an optional step. So, now that we've covered everything pertaining to the layers that come with the dev kit, we can jump into actually importing our assets and getting started with creating our first lip. So, step 1 is adding in your lip swatch. Now, to do this, you'll want to navigate to the folder where you have it saved. I have it saved in a folder already named Mako Lips, because that's my friend that asked me to do the tutorial, so I decided to name the collection after her. And this will be for sale in my store after this tutorial goes up. Okay, so I'm going to click on the image to activate the selection of it in the Explorer, and then I'm going to drag and drop it into the file, and it'll create a new layer. And you can select this tick here or press enter to confirm the placement. Now, because this image is basically perfectly aligned, we don't need to do that much by way of manipulating the placement. I like placing it under my HD Lips UV just so I can see where everything needs to be. Alternatively, you can have like a drawing like this to see how you need to size everything. But for now, what's important is to kind of smush in the sides to get it to fit to the rough size of the UV. To do that, with the active layer selected, I'm going to press Ctrl T on my keyboard for transform, and I'm just going to shift drag the sides in, just so that it only stretches out to where we need it. And then I'm going to press enter to confirm, and now we can hide this so that I can see a little bit better what's going on. If you don't have a layer like this, then that's when you use this, basically. And I'm just going to lower the opacity, kind of, a little bit. Well, actually, let me just up the contrast by pressing Ctrl L to bring up this levels panel. And then I'm just going to make the brights brighter and the darks darker. There we go. Just so I can kind of see better what's going on, because now I know this has to be outside and the rest is inside. So let me lower the opacity of that and hide it for now, and hide this as well, because our next step is going to be separating the top lip from the bottom lip. And the reason I do this is because it's a lot easier to work with the liquify tool, which is what we're predominantly going to be using to smush and tweak all of this and move it about, if you don't have them connected by the same layer, because then what happens is if you go to liquify this upwards, it'll drag the bottom lip with, and vice versa. And so I tend to separate them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press L on my keyboard or come up here to the lasso tool. And I'm just using the regular lasso tool instead of the polygonal lasso tool, because there's a nifty trick where if you press with your mouse or with your pen or whatever, if you press with your left mouse button and then you press Alt on your keyboard and then you release click, you'll see the icon changes to the polygonal lasso tool, and then you can polygonal select and you can drag select. So you basically have both tools in one. So I'm just going to go ahead and select around the lips. You don't need to leave that much of a buffer, because obviously with my alpha layers that I have mentioned previously, it's going to blur out the edges. And so it doesn't really have to be perfect, the selection, just approximately what you want in your lip. And then I'm going to press Ctrl C and Ctrl Shift V to paste in the same location. So you can see if I hide the background, that layer is staying. And then I'm going to hide the foreground. And again, I'm going to click Alt and then release and select the bottom. And I'm just drag selecting over the rounded bits because it's a bit easier sometimes, but usually on these long straights it's easier to be able to polygonal select, which is why I like this method of lassoing. And release everything to confirm the selection, and then again Ctrl C, Ctrl Shift V, and we can hide the background. And let me show the two lip layers, and there we go. So now I'm going to reactivate this just so I can kind of see what's going on. And now we can see that the lip is much too big. It's much too thick here. So I'm going to Ctrl T, and again I'm going to Shift drag the top just to get this to be where I need it to be. And now, before we start using the liquify tool, I'm going to switch to warp mode, because warping is like, it's kind of like a less precise way of using the liquify tool, where you get a warp grid and you can drag points on the grid in the direction that you want to move your mesh, or I guess layer in. So to enable warp mode, I'm going to right click in my transform selection and go to warp, and you'll see that this grid is active. And now what I can do is I can start dragging these points up to roughly where I want them and dragging them middle down. And you'll want to drag it down further than you think, because this UV, again, there's a little bit of warping going on. There's a little bit of smushing and puckering and all of that. And yes, we are going to tackle it in the liquify tool. But for now, to just sort of get it approximately to this shape is good. And enter. And then I'm going to do the same with the top lip. Control T to roughly get it to where I want it in terms of height. And then when I'm happy, I can right click in that selection and warp and just drag the corners down and then drag this out a little bit. As you can see, there's quite a lot of warping on the upper lip. So I'm just going to try and duplicate this on both sides. There we go. And once I'm happy, I'm just going to confirm. And now I can hide this, and I can actually hide the background as well. And you'll see we have something resembling the demo that I showed you earlier going on. So now is a good time to start applying my alphas, and I will show you how to do this now. So in the download that you'll find in the description, you will receive these two alphas. Now, what these are is I've manually gone and painted these, and this is one with a slightly harder edge, and this is one with a very soft edge. Now, they might not look that different here as previews, but I assure you they make a difference when you use them in world, because less is more when it comes to Second Life UVs, and even just a pixel's difference in feathering makes a lot of difference. So I'm going to start off with the hard edge, and then I'm going to create a folder outside of that folder that encompasses the folder and apply the soft edge to that, and then hide the soft edge, because we want to work outside the borders of the soft edge, because otherwise you're just going to end up with transparency when you apply the hard edge. So first do your hard edge, then do your soft edge, basically. So I'm just going to drag both of those alphas in the same way we did our reference, like so. And I'm just going to move them outside of the folder, and I'll hide the soft one for now. And now what we want to do is we want to apply this alpha to the HD Lips folder. And to do that, we're going to press Control A on our keyboards to select all, and then we're going to press Control C again. We're going to hide the alpha now, and then we're going to click on the overarching folder of the lips. And we're going to click this button here called Add Layer Mask. And now, if we Alt-click on this little preview of the mask, we switch into mask viewing mode. And now, pressing Control A again, we can press Control V to paste, and it'll paste the alpha into the mask. And now we can press Control D to deselect, and again Alt-click on that preview to exit out of it. And now you'll see that that soft alpha has been applied. Well, I say soft, it's softer than not having an alpha at all, but it is my hard alpha. Anyway, now I will reactivate the background, and you can see how soft that edge is. It's really taken care of pretty much everything for us. So now I'm going to show you how to create the overarching group and do the same with the soft alpha on that group. So I'm just going to click this little arrow here to minimize the view of the contents of this group. And with this group selected, I'm going to press Control G to create a group with that group inside it. And now I'm going to make this soft alpha visible and select it and press Control A and Control C to copy. And then we can hide it again, and we can go to the group, and again we can create a layer mask, and then Alt-click on the layer mask, press Control A to select all, Control V to paste, Control D to deselect, and Alt-click it again, and you'll see that the alpha is even softer. And now if I make this visible, you'll see that this is the soft-edged alpha that I was talking about. And now, to hide the soft alpha, what you're going to do is you're going to shift click that mask and it deactivates it. So again, shift click to reactivate and shift click to deactivate. For now, we're going to keep it deactivated because we want to work on getting the overall positioning of this texture correct. So I'm going to hide the background, and now we get to start testing it in world. So to do this, you want to navigate to your head folder of your LeLutka head, or of whatever LeLutka head you're using to create your makeup bases with. And inside that folder, you'll find Creator Kit LeLutka 3.1. And you want to unpack this, and once you've unpacked it, within that folder, you will find this. LTA LeLutka 1.3.3 or point whatever it is when you're watching this video. And what this is this is a script that when you drop it into an object and you apply a texture to that object from your local files, it allows you to test that local texture on your avatar. So what this enables us to do is it enables us to test our textures before uploading them, thus saving us a lot of lindens. So, to get this started, I'm just going to right-click on my background, or you can zoom out and right-click on the floor, and just create a square. Oh, hang on, I need to switch to my land group quickly. There we go. Right-click, create your prim. And I'm just going to move it up so that I can see it whilst I'm zoomed in quickly. There we go. Let me just zoom in. There we go. And go to Contents and drag this script in. And you'll see in the nearby chat, it'll say, please add a local texture on me and click me. So to do this, we're going to go to Texture. And this is where we'll add it. But first we need to export our texture locally. So to do that in Photoshop, I'm going to press Ctrl-Q, and that'll export it as a PNG. This is a quick export. And I'm just going to navigate to my lips folder that I've created, and I'm just going to name it Test, and I'm going to save it. And then you'll see it's created this texture here. It might take a second to load because I have a lot of stuff open. Here we go. And now back in Firestorm, if you click on Texture, and you go to Local and Add, and you again navigate to where you've saved your texture just now, and you click it and open. You select it, and it'll apply it to the prim. Press OK, and exit out of the Edit menu. And then if you click on the texture, you'll see this menu comes up, asking you where you would like to apply this texture to. Now, we want to apply it to the HD lips as a diffuse. Diffuse basically just means your base texture. Normal is for a normal map and specular is for your shine. But we want a base texture. So we're going to click diffuse, and there we go. Now, using Ctrl-0, I'm just going to zoom in without the fisheye effect. And now is a good time to open your LeLutka HUD and open your avatar's mouth and have a look at that edge. See how it's not very soft? We're going to fix that now. So hopping back into Photoshop, we're going to come down to your lip layer, and we're going to create a group within this group of the two of them. So to do this, I'm going to click one and shift click the next, and Ctrl-G again to group them. And then I'm just going to create a plain white mask, white meaning visible, black meaning invisible. And then I'm going to switch to my brush tool by pressing B on my keyboard or coming over here. And I just have this soft brush here. If you just use your basic soft brush, I'm going to turn on symmetry up here on this little butterfly. I'm going to select vertical, and by default, it'll set it to the center of your screen. Now that's what you want. And then confirm. And then I'm going to make my brush bigger. And I'm just going to paint with black. I'm just going to paint in a soft alpha myself. Now again, you can make the background visible if it helps you to see this, because if you're blind like me, then it probably will. And I'm just going to add a very thin, transparent edge here. And I'm just painting with little strokes. It doesn't need to be perfect. We can always blur it. So I'm just going to paint this like so. Just so that this hard edge is gone. And now, clicking on the mask, I'm going to come up to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and I'm just going to make sure that it's completely blurred, this edge. I'm just dragging this up bit by bit until it looks as blurred as I'd like it. Oh, that's too much. Too much. There we go. And then if we preview, yes, that's helped a little bit. And now we can turn symmetry back off. And we can hide the background. And now again, we can press Control Q and double click the file to overwrite it. And yes. And then if we switch back to Second Life, it'll automatically update that texture for us. Oh, go away. Hang on. It's removed the texture. It didn't save it properly. My Photoshop has this glitch where it doesn't save textures properly. You can see it's gone black. Let me just resave that. There we go. And now you can see that edge is a lot softer. So we can close her mouth again. And we can keep working. Because this isn't in a position that we want it to be in. So, coming back here, we can see that the lip actually stretches further up. So, oh, I hid the wrong thing. To fix that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the background visible again. And I'm just going to transform this mask by dragging this up a little bit. Oh, but make sure to unlink it from these layers first, otherwise it'll transform them as well. There we go. And then I'm going to go into Control T, transform the lip, right click, warp, and just drag the middle up a little bit. But keeping these shine marks further down. Because there's a lot of puckering that goes on here. So I'm just going to drag this up, but keep those as far down as possible. And again, if they get too stretched, it's fine. With the liquify tool, we can fix that. And enter. Now I can hide this and I can relink that. And Control Q. Double click to overwrite. Yes. And now we wait for the texture to upload and to refresh. There we go. And you can see that that has dragged it further up. So, it's a very simple way of creating lips, you guys. This reference happens to be great. If your reference isn't that good, you might need to do a lot more smushing about in Liquify tool, which I'm going to show you now, because as you can see, this is too far down and I don't like it. So, coming back into Photoshop, I'm going to go into Filter and Liquify. And now you can see it without the alpha, and that's fine. And what we're going to do is, in this forward warp tool, I'm going to select a slightly smaller brush. Oh, not that small. There we go. And I'm just going to drag this up slowly. Rather less than too much, because otherwise you have to do a lot of Control-Z commands to keep redoing things. And I'm just going to very gradually just nudge it up. And here you have this preview. You can turn it off and on just to see where things are. So I'm also going to try and straighten things out a little bit because I don't like how this is further up than on that side. Okay. And now I'm going to test this again. And make sure to periodically save your file because otherwise Photoshop might crash, which it has done to me numerous times. So, double click to overwrite, yes. And let's hope that Photoshop works this time. Nope, it didn't want to work. Okay, I promise you guys, this usually doesn't happen. I think it's because I have OBS open, and Photoshop is not liking being open at the same time. Yay, it did it! Okay, I'm liking that placement a lot better. So, now, what we want to do is we want to start checking, is this compatible with being skinless? So to do this, what you want to do is you want to navigate to a darker skin tone than what you're wearing, or a lighter one. And you want to put that on and check the edges. So let me just navigate to one and I'll show you what I mean. So I'm just currently putting on a mud skin, which is a lot darker. And as you can see, there is no edge to this lip. Just moving around my avatar. I'm just checking under the lip, which is a notorious place where you can get skin residue. No, it's looking okay. Okay. So now I'll go darker and darker progressively. And these skins don't have to be beautiful. You're literally just testing skin tones right now. Where has that gone? Okay, so I found a really dark skin by Gloom. And as you can see, there is some slight transparency issue here. And let me open the mouth. You can see it doesn't quite go to the edges like we'd like. So I'm going to hop back into Photoshop and turn my background on, and I just do this for visibility. And basically what you want to do is you want to turn back on symmetry, enter, and I'm just going to repaint in with a small brush the corners to try and get it to go where I want it to be. And then in the overarching alpha, I'm going to switch to black, which is invisible, and I'm just going to paint these corners out a little bit. And then I'm going to hide this again and turn off symmetry. And I'm going to export it. And you can see that here that's a lot softer now. On the inner lip, I'm still not happy. And I think that's from this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn back on symmetry. And I'm just going to play around until I'm happy, basically, is what you kind of have to do. Now, these alphas aren't perfect because cosmetics and lips and skins and stuff like that aren't actually my primary forte. But I think that they're a good starting point, which is why I'm providing them for you guys. Oh! It did the glitch again. Hang on. Let me go to File and export it this way. Export as PNG. Export. Overwrite. Yes. Come on. There we go. Now it's looking smooth. So now when I close the mouth, it looks a lot better. Now, obviously, I'm going to show you guys how to do swatches so that this will actually look better on darker skin tones. But yes, for now, I'm going to take off that skin. And as you can see, it fits quite well in the mouth area. And now we're going to see what it looks like with the soft alpha. So let me turn off symmetry again. And shift click to view that alpha. Save. And actually, you can delete these two from your file if you don't need them anymore. And now I'm going to overwrite it again. There we go. And we can see that that's a lot softer than the other one. Let me reactivate the other one just to show you. There we go. So you can see that the difference is very clear between the soft edge and the hard edge. Now, obviously, if you wanted this soft edge to be a little bit less soft, you could go in with levels by selecting the mask and pressing Ctrl L. And then you can slowly play around with this inner slider, which is like a softer version of these outer sliders. It's not as harsh. And you can just gradually bump that towards the black to show more, for example. So now if I export this, you can see that the difference is a little bit less extreme, a little bit less intense. So you can really play around with these alphas that I've provided for you. But yes, once you're happy with your lips, and again, if yours don't come from as clear a reference picture, then feel free to, you know, liquefy some more, play around some more, etc. we can now move on to getting the swatches up and running. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this folder here, this HD Lips folder, and I'm actually going to rename it by double clicking. I'm going to call this swatch 1, or whatever you want to name the swatch. I guess this would be a bit of a peachy corally color. Maybe go coral. And then in brackets I put base, just so that I know that this is the folder that I have to go into to get everything if I want to make any adjustments. And enter. And now I'm going to create another folder, and bear in mind that all of this is still within this soft folder. So if I want to turn this on at any time or off, I can. And now this folder I'm going to name swatch 2, or whatever you want your next color to be, in my case, orange. And within this folder, I'm going to come down here to create new fill or adjustment layer. And I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to select hue and saturation. And I'm just going to shift this a little bit towards the orange. And bump up the saturation, maybe a little bit less. And if we look before and after, you can see that there's quite a clear difference. And now I want it to be slightly darker. So I'm again going to come over here. And I'm going to go to exposure. And I'm just going to bring that down a little bit. And that. And the gamma correction up just a little bit. And now you can see that it's literally just changed the color, but basically the intensity is the same. You can also achieve this with levels, but for lips, generally when I'm making small adjustments like this, I tend to prefer exposure, just because it has the 3 sliders rather than the lines and stuff. So I'm just going to export this and see what it looks like. And I test every single swatch when I make them, just to check that I like all of them. So for example, I don't quite like how orange that is. So I'm just going to go back into the adjustments here. And maybe make it slightly less orange. Slightly less saturated. There we go. And again, we're going to overwrite that. And I like that a lot more. So now I'm also going to test this one with the softer alpha enabled. Yes, I quite like that. Okay, so I'm going to continue making my swatches like this. And then this would also be the time to add in your save slot preview. On a separate layer. And then what you want to do is when you save each of your swatches, save them with a clear naming system. So for example, lip_coral. Or if you're going with a skin tone system, then this would be pale_coral, and then you do light_coral, medium_coral, dark_coral, etc. I did this with a recent set of mine where I was basically playing around with adding teeth to the appliers. In the end, I actually scrapped the set because I didn't quite like how it came out. But yes, you can achieve skin color systems if you use this exposure or level system like I showed you. So for example, if you wanted to make a darker version of this, you'd go into levels and you would just darken it like so. And then let me hide that. And you can see that that's one skin tone darker, and then just duplicate that, one skin tone darker, one skin tone darker, etc. And that's basically how you end up with the different skin tones. So yes, as far as the textures go, that's basically everything I'm covering for this part of the tutorial. I will try to next week upload a part 2, which is about importing your swatches and creating your HUD, and then setting up your HUD and scripting it in World, because LeLutka provide their own scripts for their applier HUDs. So you don't need to use your own system like Bosch or Pixel or what have you. You can just use the ones that come in their dev kit. So I will try and get that up and running for next week. But yes, if you have any questions after this video, please make sure to leave them in the comments down below and I will try and get to them there. If not, I will include them in the video next week. Probably at the end I'll do a little Q&A bit where I will just go over any sort of questions you guys might have had, and clear up any, I don't know, misunderstandings if there are any, or etc. So yes, that'll do it for me today. If you liked the video, please make sure to give it a like so that I know you liked it, and subscribe if you want to see more. Bye guys!